Welcome to The Outsiders, the podcast on the future state of Ultimate.
It's our first episode. Thanks for joining our beta test. I'm Tony Leonardo, author of 2 books on Ultimate Frisbee. We can now say Frisbee, Tushar. It's amazing. Apparently that word has come back. We'll see how long it lasts. I'm also, you might also hear me on color for the New York Empire. I'm a longtime Nationals and Worlds journalist and broadcast commentator, and I'm currently working on a feature documentary about the origins of Ultimate called The Lot.
And I'm Tushar Singh, an average Ultimate player, editor of I Am Ultimate, and I'm currently recovering from ACL reconstruction surgery, which means those who cannot play, podcast.
So why a podcast? Well, we wanted to explore the future of Ultimate and where we will be in 10 years. Hopefully this podcast will answer that question. And we're going to find out by speaking with some of the leaders in disc sports.
In this first episode, we're going to be speaking with Manisha Diani, a longtime Fury player, coach of the Bay Area Falcons, and president of the Western Ultimate League, the WUL, many-time world national champion and an icon in our sport.
Yeah, Manisha is a longtime friend of the pod. You have to just say friend of the pod, even though she's a friend of ours. I mean, I've known her for some time, but because it's a podcast, we have to say friend of the pod. We're going to talk to Slap about all the good questions. Okay, this week, Tushar, the news came out on Wednesday that, and we're recording now on Sunday, that the AUDL is going to be rebranded to the Ultimate Frisbee Association. They are partnering with Wham-O, the licensing of the word Frisbee. Of course, they're going to remake the discs that they bought, the Aria Uno disc, and that will eventually become a Wham-O disc. Wow. A lot there to unpack. We'll start by just saying that, like, this is an interesting move. I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. I was very surprised. And I will say there's a lot more to this story than is on the surface. On the surface, this is a rebrand. They're going to use the Aria disc and call it a Frisbee eventually, and Wham-O's around. Who cares? I personally think that there's a lot more to this story, so I'm excited to talk to you about it, Tushar, and tell everyone in our audience about it. So let's just start with Tushar. When did you first hear the news, and just sort of your first reactions to it?
Yeah, so I think you had a little bit of more of an inkling. You wouldn't tell me what was going on, but I started hearing things about it basically the day before that it was happening, or even maybe one more day before that. And I started connecting out to find out, because, I can think whatever I want to think. I'm not an insider who's actually making changes in the sport. And so I wanted to know what others were thinking about it. And it's been like, from USAU, people I know at USAU, they've said that they are watching the news and seeing how it develops, but it doesn't seem to affect their day-to-day. Which kind of makes sense to me right now, because we haven't seen what happens. It's so early in the season. Like, the season hasn't even started. We haven't seen how this is going into market. So we need to see what's actually going to happen. How is the UFA going to capitalize on this? Are they going to do everything perfectly and then potentially impact the leagues? Or, what is the counterpoint going to be? How else will this work out? And from others that I've also seen, is they told me don't read too much into it. But then I speak with you, and you seem to be extremely enthusiastic about the impact that this will have on our sport. And that's what I'm interested in knowing, why.
Yeah, let me tell you. So I do think that there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye. I do think that you can read more into it. And I'll tell you why. I've been studying the history of our sport for a good 5 years now, working on this documentary. Obviously, I co-wrote the book on the history of Ultimate itself. And Wham-O is all throughout the book. It's all throughout the documentary. Wham-O has been a part of the story of the sport from the very beginning. And there's a good reason for that. They made the discs, and the discs were important. They didn't just make the discs. Some of the early Ultimate competitions, the little highlight scenarios where they were trying to mainstream it, perhaps, like trying to take Ultimate to the next level, that was sponsored by Wham-O. you'd go to the Rose Bowl and you would play this demonstration ultimate Frisbee game along with these other sports that Wham-O was trying to see if these could take off and become like popular. Whether it was the distance competitions, guts, disc golf, and ultimate, they're all in there. Wham-O went around and started Frisbee associations in countries around the world. The reason that there's ultimate Frisbee in Japan and in Finland and Germany is because of Wham-O. Wham-O went there in the 1970s. Dan Roddick started became the guy at the head of the International Frisbee Association. They promoted all things disc sports. So Wham-O has long been a supporter and promoter of the sport, but they didn't really push ultimate specifically at this time, right? It was just one of the things. And the end goal for Wham-O was to sell some discs. And a lot of their discs were kind of crappy, but the discs for ultimate were very good. In the 1980s, they kind of went away. The company got sold in 1982 to a company in Northern California that made boogie boards, and the brand essentially continued to deteriorate. Our sport went its own way. Disc golf went its own way. Both sports went to Wham-O headquarters, went to the guys that ran Wham-O. This would be Mellon and Nur, they're the last names, and said, we think this sport should be promoted and marketed, and you could run with this. And Wham-O said to Ultimate Frisbee, I don't think so. Wham-O said to disc golf, no, you're never going to eclipse ball golf. And we know that I know that disc golf is like saying to themselves, one day we're going to be bigger than ball golf. And they're probably not wrong. It might be 50 years from now, could be 100 years from now, but that thing, anybody can play disc golf, and that is enticing. And Ultimate Frisbee, we have a similar kind of zeal, a zealotry to us, where we think we can conquer the world. This sport, anybody can play this sport. We're open to everyone. It's not American football. It's like soccer. Anyone can play this sport. But Wham-O did not agree. So for 40 years, they've been out of the sport. And now for them to come back is interesting because everybody knows what a Frisbee is. You don't have to tell somebody what a Frisbee is. If you tell them you're playing Frisbee, they think, okay, you're throwing a Frisbee around. You tell them you're playing Ultimate Frisbee, they think, well, I don't quite know what that is, but I know what you're using, a Frisbee. You tell them you play Ultimate Disc, it gets a little bit weird, maybe. You tell them you play disc golf, okay. Frisbee is a marketable, worldwide known term, and it's a word, and it's a thing. And for them to come back in now and get back on board with Ultimate specifically, it could mean something pretty big.
Respectfully, Tony, I disagree. I was going to use some other words there.
Who's paying you? Who's paying you to disagree?
So,
Discraft? Show me the check.
Well, I don't think either of us are making any money on this as you drink from your USA Ultimate cup.
USA Ultimate Disc. This is to you.
So here's I think a little bit of difference, because we're aware, generally speaking, of Wham-O and how they're in market early on in the sport, how the early apple seeds of the sport, like the apple seeds of the sport, worked with Wham-O, how they were supported. They went away in the 80s as well because there was a change in leadership at Wham-O. And companies are currently still run by people, at least they were in those days. We're not yet AI dominated in terms of our management. That will come. But what we are right now is we had a flying disc sport company, which is the AUDL, and that ownership go and license a term from Wham-O. Okay. It wasn't Wham-O coming back into the sport and saying, we are going to sponsor. This is not Wham-O coming and putting money into the sport, which is what they did in the 70s and 80s. This is Wham-O earning money from the sport through equipment because of someone in the sport paying Wham-O. And the leadership of Wham-O isn't here in the US or Canada. The leadership of the sport is based on producing physical objects for sale, and they have not put anything back in. Correct. If we say Ultimate as a sport, and I'm including, the general collective of the AUDL because we know everyone who's there, they're friends, right? We have all to degree supported them as well as the other professional and not-for-profit leagues. We have now taken money out of Ultimate in order to buy a trademark license deal with Wham-O. That's why I think this isn't like it was in the 70s and 80s. Wham-O hasn't come back. We brought Wham-O back by paying them. To what will happen next, I think that's the interesting piece. Will Wham-O become more interested? Will they start sponsoring again? Will they play a more active role? Or is it going to still be our groups there giving money to them like we give money to ESPN?
1,000%. I mean, what has gone wrong with our sport? One of the things that gone wrong with the sport is no one's put a dime in. That's wrong. People put a lot of money and invest a lot of money in, but where they have not invested a lot of money in is marketing. They've done a terrible job at it. Our sport is marketed like, I don't know, it's like a joke, but especially to mainstream. And maybe our sport doesn't want that. I get that. Like our sport's just not ready for that. So the question for me, which you bring up pretty saliently, is like, is Wham-O gonna invest some money? Like, does this deal? And we talked a little bit about the deal at some point. We can go back and look at this. Is Wham-O going to put some money in for marketing? Are they going to try to also promote the Ultimate Frisbee Association, which is a great boon for AUDL, or the sport itself? My insiders tell me they don't think that they're going to put any money in. So I'm with you on that. Like, what's Wham-O doing for us? What's Wham-O doing for the sport? We know what they're getting in return. We do know that this is strictly kind of a deal for both the AUDL, now called the UFA, and Wham-O, and it's a clever deal. But both organizations, I hope, need to see that marketing and getting money into youth is where we need to be going.
So I agree with you on many of those points, right? And I do think that this now puts a lot of pressure on UFA to profit from what they're trying to do. Now, how does this impact USAU though?
Look, I think this outboxes. I think this puts USAU in a box, and I think it does it in a way that is really clever, right? It's like USAU has avoided. We don't call it Ultimate Frisbee. We don't go on TV saying Ultimate Frisbee. It's a verboten name, and we all say it every now and then. And the connotations of the word Frisbee, Tushar, I think to me are still beaches and dogs, and maybe to others, it's a toy, it's a plaything. So even more so than this deal, I think this is an opportunity for Wham-O and for UFA to reimagine the connotation of the Frisbee. Because if the Frisbee all of a sudden gets known as a sporting device, which is what our founders want, and we're going to talk to Irv Kalb in a future episode for here about what they saw the Frisbee as, which is a sporting device to millions. That's great. That's a wonderful thing. And maybe they can bring it mainstream. Maybe Frisbee does catch a sort of popular terminology vibe where now it's not thought of as a joke thing. It's like, oh, it's the Ultimate Frisbee. Yeah, we know what that is. That's a league. That's a sports thing. That's a sport. It's a sport. We can become a sport if this name is able to stick and get rid of the connotations from the past of it being a hippie thing, a beach thing, a dog thing.
You know how much I love Beach Ultimate, right? But I get what you're saying is it's not Beach Ultimate. It's people
throwing the disc on the beach, buddy, with the suntan,
Yeah. And I think that's one of the issues as well is I have crossed the border many times and had to declare I'm going to an Ultimate Frisbee tournament. And I've had border agents ask me and customs border agents ask me, where's your dog?
And what, did you have a dog?
Then I have to explain to them what Ultimate Frisbee is, and they get bored and let me through. So I think, there is more for realization. And I think in one of the articles as well, that came out, it was a Forbes article, and there was something about this now going to like having that professional disc in major sporting goods stores, which then goes to your point of this will become more mainstream.
I think, look, the AUDL and the owners They want to. They see a vision for the future, and they haven't invested a lot of money to not seeing this all play out, right? So they see a future where this sport can become a next great big North American sport, and that there's money in it, and that there's power to develop a brand and marketing and to really raise the level of it, and really one day get to the Olympics. I mean, I think they see all that on the table, and getting Frisbee back into it is kind of a genius thing. If the Frisbee can turn from being a toy to a sporting device, then that's huge. And sorry, I didn't answer your question about USAU. I'll just go back really quick and say USAU now is boxed out potentially of using the term Frisbee. If Frisbee becomes popular 5-10 years from now, it's USA Ultimate Disc, not USAU Ultimate Frisbee, because that's already taken. There's already the Ultimate Frisbee Association. So are they going to also make a deal with Wham-O? Is Wham-O going to license to USAU for their club division, which is in competition to the UFA? I don't know, but they're on the outside right now looking in.
So you've also spoken with a few folks higher up the food chain, and are their thoughts similar as well?
Sure. Here's one from someone who's pretty well informed and pretty well on top of someone in the international scene that has some good contacts, in North America and around the world. I asked the question, is this a power play by AUDL to take the sport away from USAU a little more each passing day? Do you agree? Because the UFA, they're going to start youth divisions. They're going to start training camps. They already are. They see some opportunities that USAU is lacking in that maybe they can kind of take advantage of. And this person's response was 100%. I don't know. It's a strong move. It's a strong move by the UFA.
It's strong, and it is a developing story that I suspect we're going to speak more about over whatever it is here we're doing with this podcast. I don't think we have any idea in what we're doing here, other than we want to have interesting conversations.
We want to entertain you, the viewer or the listener, as I think it's important.
So with that, I think we move on to our first guest ever on our first podcast. And that will be Manisha Diani, as we introduced her previously.
What is up, Slap? How you doing?
Not bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm feeling great. I feel good. I feel real good.
Good.
I don't know why. There's no real reason for that.
I'm fine with it. Let's go.
Also, cool to hear you on the broadcasts for nationals this past year.
I had a blast, and I had a front row seat to that strip.
Yeah, you did, right? Okay, yeah. Let's go to that. So, all right, why did Boston just kind of give it up? Like they should have fought for it more. What do you think?
It's not that they didn't. There was genuine confusion as to what the proper procedure should be in that moment.
Okay.
I was privy, mainly because I do insert myself into situations when I feel it prudent, as to the conversations that happened after that particular game.
Ooh.
It began with a notification that a photographer had actually captured the not strip.
Yeah, Kolakovic.
Yes. And he approached some of the players to let them know that he had this shot. Yeah. Now, as you know, we've been adopting this WIF-DIF rule, talking about the use of cameras to be able to discuss calls. I have many perspectives on this, and whether I'm a fan, whether I'm a player, whether I'm a coach. There's a lot of questions of how do you apply this rule. Mm-hmm. So, as the rule is written, a player has to solicit. Does anyone have this camera? Does anyone have this? Does everyone have it?
Okay.
And
let me interject for 1 second.
Yeah.
So we famously saw this World Games when Khalif had a shot on the sideline. I can't remember the play, but whether someone was in or out, I think.
Yep.
And everyone went over and looked at Khalif's camera or phone and was like, okay, that's the ruling.
Yeah. And so again, that adaptation has now been applied to USAU.
Mhm.
But the question, of course, is who has the affirmative duty of telling you? Is it the player going to the photographer, or is the photographer going to the player? The rule as written is the player has to go to the photographer.
Mhm.
So Boston didn't, there was nobody knew that was happening. And the challenge also was is we had 4 observers in this game. And as I understood it, those observers did discuss the call before determining that it
Really?
was not a strip.
That
Now,
happened so fast.
Now here, no, there was a, I don't know if you saw, there was a point that they actually went up to talk to each other.
Huh.
But the challenge has always been perspective matters, and where you were standing and where I happened to be, not only because of the virtue of where I was doing commentary, but also where the cameras for us were set up.
Yeah.
I happened to be at an angle that could see it.
Wow.
And if you are, so if we use sort of the middle of the screen, or if you're to the left and to the right, behind, front and behind, which is where the observers were, you could not get a good look at it. And it really looked like a clean D. But if you're standing vertically, either straight in front or straight behind, and I was behind, you see it. And that's also the benefit of the photographers. The photographers were sitting in the middle of the end zone, whereas the observers are sitting on the sidelines. So the observers just genuinely didn't see it.
Sep, wow. So this makes sense, but I guess in such a climax, such a big moment, right? They're coming up the field. Boston's nervy, right? They have the guy, I can't remember his name, gets that catch kind of in the end zone almost. Actually, you can almost go back and say like he almost caught the first one in. That's ruled not in. They go back, they go to again. And you know that this is a double game point in quarterfinals, right? So I guess the question to me is, I think I just would have done everything possible if I was Boston to like stop that game. If anyone saw that from the angle that you saw it, or anyone peeped up in the slightest, if I was anyone on Boston, I would have just been like, whoa, hold on a second here. Like stall techniques. I would have like try to slow the game down, let everyone get a clean look at what the
well,
deal
I mean,
was.
so the challenge, of course, is that this is still new, right? Hindsight's always going to be 2020. And right now, what ends up happening is you're really just sort of reeling from the outcome of the game, not realizing that this really came down to perspective. And again, you wouldn't know that until either the camera came out into play or and to be clear, even when it was obvious that this camera angle was correct, there's always the larger question, and we see this in every sport. Okay, and Ultimate's not unique to this. Calls get blown. NFL games, NBA games, calls get blown, and for the most part, we do not see, because that was the question. If you know there's a mistake, is there a righteous outcome, or is there something to be done after the fact? Right. That was actually the secondary question.
Yeah.
The first question, let's establish we acknowledge it was a missed call.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Step 2 is still, what do you do about it? And I will credit USAU, and I think that they deserve credit for willing to have a conversation, not only with team leadership, but even with headquarters. They discussed it and made the decision that the call would stand and that the outcome would stand. Now, reasonable minds will always disagree on whether or not that was the right call, but what I want to acknowledge and appreciate is that there was a discussion. It was owned, and it was a decision made. And it was an affirmative decision, not just I don't even know about it, passive outcome. And so I think in that regard, again, while everyone is going to be sad or not sad, or there's going to be an asterisk or not, that's sort of the part of playing any sport, especially ones that rely on other people to help make calls.
Okay.
That we will be more affirmative about looking and relying on video evidence to help with calls. I mean, to be clear, that is where most sports end up going, right? Like you see instant review, even in baseball, right? Recently, just a sport that's been around for over a century, just applied an instant replay review rule. And so, in many ways, especially as technology becomes more common and becomes more regular, I do see this coming into play more often. It always going to be unfortunate that it affected someone, But let's be clear, there is no sport that is not above getting the call wrong.
So I guess on that as well, from that technology coming into the sport, we've long had rules about what you can have on the sideline. For example, electronic communication and things like that. Do you see that changing as well as coaching staff perhaps wants to communicate more? Do you think that will change as well?
Yes. I mean, I already know, at least in my experience with Team USA, and I've applied it now in my other spaces, we have radios amongst the coaches to talk to each other.
Oh, wow.
And it's very advantageous. I mean, it's not a big field, but it's large enough where you want to be able to communicate. And more importantly, then consequently, coaches can then split up sidelines, sideline to sideline, but also end to end. Yeah. And I absolutely do think
when did you start doing that?
Deanna Ball really kind of clued me into this. And once I saw the benefit of it, I've now used it myself. But that said, like you use examples, binoculars are on the field as well. We have
Daryl Stanley.
Yes. We are using technology and we're adapting it into the sport. And yes, I do see us continuing to do that, continuing to push in that direction, because it almost just seems inevitable.
Two teams go down, Astra and Onyx. What will they come back, and what does it mean for the league to go from 8 to 6? And is this a temporary thing? And what does it affect the near term and the long term?
I think RED did a great job in articulating the reality of any venture. It will never be a straight line. Cool. And in so many ways, it's actually a good, healthy metric of knowing that your product is moving, that it's living. Contraction and expansion is a constant in sports. There are few sports, even if you talk about your established leagues, they're always talking about expansion. They're talking about moving cities. My community just lost our baseball team to ostensibly Vegas, but who knows? This is a product of trying to create a business, and that business is not only of the entertainment value and the talent, but it's how it fits into a community. It's what its ownerships are doing and not doing. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't.
Tell us how it's been working with Megan Andrews. I mean, 6 months in for a new executive director. You went pretty quickly. That's year 3 of the league, and you were quick to get an executive director. Tell us what that has changed for the organization and how you feel that's been moving along.
I adore Megan. I think they've done a great job of picking up where Lish left off. Lish did so much for creating and cultivating this concept on the West Coast. Megan, I think, really helps us move into the next stage, which is longevity and consistency in terms of a product. It's beta testing from our first level to second level, 2.0. And I think Megan is a great add and really utilizes their skill sets well in this space. You go from any startup, which is like year 1, year 2, can you survive? And then you're like, oh, we can survive. Okay, where are we going? Okay. And I think Megan is great, really well suited in that role of helping us sort of think ahead. Where do we want to go? Where do we need to go with this space? Like we were even today having a meeting before I met with you all today. Megan and I are on the phone together talking about what do broadcasts look like for the WUL moving forward.
Tell us.
Well, I mean, as you know, we've made a commitment as a league to have free games, not behind a paywall. But as you can imagine, that is a really common conversation of any sports is, do you create a paywall or not? Because it's a source of revenue. It's a way to build a fan base. It's a way to also in some ways sort of create a demand and interest, right? Are you in the in or not? You have the paywall. We see this with the WNBA. We were talking about, the field pass, or sorry, not field pass, the yearly pass that they created just for their WNBA games. Mm-hmm. Women's sports in particular are trying to explore ways to diversify revenue sources and to, of course, continue to bring in fans. And so we were literally having this conversation today of, you know, do we continue on this path of providing free access to our games on YouTube, or do we partner with someone and consider creating a paywall and putting the library of all of our games behind said paywall and having people, you know, pay for the access? Is
that conversation ultimate wide? I've heard some suggestions that maybe all of our sport, I mean, ostensibly we're talking North America, obviously, not obviously, but let's just say North America for now, might try to band together and say, like, here's access to all media because we're all fans of Ultimate, no matter what form it comes in. Is that something that's larger than the league itself, or are we talking the league?
It is. And yet also you can imagine there's in some ways different audiences that each group serves and or may be targeting. So there is certainly power in numbers, and I don't think that those conversations should not be happening. And I think USAU should be in those conversations as well.
Oh, are you saying that USAU is not in these conversations to band together for media?
I'm saying moving forward, we should have them there.
Well, it's a reasonable kind of way to think about accessibility to the sport as well. So I think last year, the year before here in Canada, and I'm not saying I did a good job of it, but we actually had our executive director have our nationals games streamed on CBC, which is our national broadcaster on YouTube. So we were actually carried through their channel. And I do know that will increase visibility, but it also allows us to showcase a higher level of the game rather than, you know, somewhat lower level local broadcast, where we used to have league level games being broadcast on a local broadcaster. But circling back, I think, you know, just a little bit to the conversations with your ED, how involved is your board in the week to week, month to month of the WUL at this point in the year versus during the actual seasons?
So our board does meet bi-monthly, so 2 times a month. As you can imagine, Megan is contracted basically to work 10 to 15 hours a week outside of a normal job that they also still have. And so the board is getting regular updates from Megan and giving regular advice and feedback. There's so many decisions we're making in real time. Again, this in many ways is still a startup. You're making decisions on staffing. You're making decisions on, marketing decisions. And in so many ways, we don't have the staff yet to have built that out. Our board in many ways is a working board. A lot of us are contributing our time as well. A second call I was on tonight was the rules committee. And so we are collaborating and also providing guidance to Megan. And I think it's a really good symbiotic relationship. I think it gives Megan the support that they need in order to continue to forge with this venture. But it also gives the board the capacity of saying, hey, you're the figurehead. You're going to help sell this. You're going to be the person who's going to go market and help, not only build the brand, but build visibility. As you said, was something that we really need.
On this topic, I think, Slap, what the very noticeable thing with the WUL, more so than the AUDL, now the UFA, more so than PUL, more so than USAU, is this league started with a high visibility and attention to detail with the commercial aspects of it. And by that, I mean, it looked professional from day one. You had the best jerseys, the best designs. The setup of the teams was very well organized. You had your broadcast, they were top notch. So it's like everything the league has done, the rosters were on time. There wasn't a whole lot of controversy or confusion. Everyone was on the same page. So to me, I think this is the first from the get-go, I would say, commercial venture. Is that an accurate way to kind of look at it? Because, or am I reading that wrong in a way?
No, I think in many ways we're appreciative that you're reading it that way, because the venture we're undertaking is to create visibility, and to make it visible, you have to make it attractive. And so, yeah, we have spent a lot of time and energy in terms of making sure that we are pushing our teams to hire local videographers who are going to give us multiple camera angles, who are going to give us replays, who are going to give us graphics. who are going to be able to put it on 4K. Those are things that we've built into our own operations manual as part of building this product out. It's not enough to have a highlight level play. We need 3 angles of it.
Wow.
Because that's what gets you onto SportsCenter. That's what gets people excited. And in the end, if you actually sort of look just on a cinematography like lens of other sports, that's what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
That's now, and you look at even tennis, which I love, the slow motion, the agony of just the shot that they've missed. Those are choices that people are making to build that storyline of the sport and of the athletes themselves. And there's so much that you can do with film that goes beyond just the game experience. And don't get me wrong, we're not losing that. We continue to focus on that as well. But we're also saying, can we build this other aspect in? Can we build this film, this visual aspect in terms of what folks are seeing as a product online?
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, you're talking to a filmmaker, so I'm all for that. And this Outsiders podcast, Chuck Cleary is one of our outsiders, and I will 100% agree with you on all of that. He loves it, and he knows how to convey and show emotion and also the drama of an amazing athletic play and what that stands for. So we're all behind you on that. Can I bring up a quote for you real quick?
Sure.
This is from the 2024 Aspen Institute survey. Might have been 2023. Sports participation is increasing for girls and declining for boys. Boys, 40% still regularly played sports at a higher rate than girls, 35% in 2022, according to national data from SFIA. But 2 genders are going in opposite directions. A decade ago, half of the boys regularly played sports. The participation rate for girls is the highest since 2013. The future is female. You've talked about this. I've seen it. I see an increasing number of fans you see for WNBA games, you see for college women's basketball. Is this something you're betting on? Is this, and betting might be the wrong word, but are you sensing like this is our time 10 years from now, this is going to be a major thing?
Well, I'm going to pull the onion back for just a second and kind of digest the statistics that you gave me and offer maybe a bigger macro perspective. The correct number of participation in sports should be equal amongst the genders. We should see an equal number of boys and girls playing. And so when that number hits an equilibrium, that's when I think we'll get parity. We've built a culture that sort of suggested a generation, even 2 generations, 3 generations, hell, even this current generation, that suggested that one gender was to be the athletic one and the other one was not. We are finally seeing that norm switch. So I don't treat the lack of boys in sport as indicative that something's wrong. I think it's that we're finally letting people choose once and for all whether they want to participate in the sport or not. But that said, you are correct that there is a momentum shift if you are just focusing on female matching players, that there is a tide that is lifting right now. And you are absolutely correct that there is the time, place, money to be investing in this space. Anytime you see any increased interest in any age, gender group, you're absolutely right. It's a venture that should be capitalized on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We're seeing it in so many other women's sports right now. I'm particularly excited. Again, for this context, I'm Bay Area based, so I will offer a lot of perspectives on California based stuff. While we lost our male matching sports, we announced a Bay FC, which is an NWSL team that just got is starting this season here in the Bay Area. And then next year, as I understand it, 2025, there will be a WNBA team here in the Bay Area.
Wow.
And so there, to your point, this is something that we can and should be capitalizing on, because the entertainment value isn't actually based on the gender. It's just entertaining.
Correct.
And so we just need opportunities to give folks a chance to see it and be entertained by it. In the end, COVID taught us one thing. We missed being together. We missed having opportunities to celebrate, witness greatness. And that's why you still see fans going out to Buffalo when it's negative 30 degrees out and shoveling snow, because there's something about being present and being witness to something that is so innately human. And that story doesn't have to be told just through male matching players. It can be told through female matching players, and it should be told through female matching players as well.
Slap, this is a big question for you, and we'll get into it a little bit. I don't know how much time you have, but won't go too much. But the news yesterday, the American Ultimate Disc League is no longer. It is now the Ultimate Frisbee Association, which, if you were to tell someone this, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago, tell someone this today, it seems crazy. I mean, it still seems a little wild to me. Frisbee in my world, and I've studied a lot of the history of Frisbee. I've studied I've talked to the people who've made history in Frisbee and in Ultimate Frisbee. There's a difference. So I guess the first question I want to ask you is, when the news broke that Frisbee, the name Frisbee, legally, and you're a lawyer, is coming back into our sport, what was the first thoughts that went through your head?
So so I'm an attorney, and in fairness, I'm a criminal defense attorney, but I do pay attention to these things. I've always been acutely aware that the word Frisbee had been trademarked. I know that in early 2000s, there was an attempt to call it a generic term. So the argument is a term is trademarked by anyone. You, Tushar, could trademark a concept or term. The challenge will always come if someone says, hey, that term is so generic, you cannot own a trademark for it. So many words that have actually been trademarked previously have now fallen into what we call a generic term, and that trademark is then lost. The point of a trademark is to be able to say, hey, if someone utilizes this and makes money off of it, I need a cut, or you need my permission. Mm-hmm. One or the other.
Okay.
Wham-O, by and large, made it clear that I understand it, that they were not interested in sharing this term.
Yeah.
And so you've seen, whether we've done deliberate or not, this sort of tiptoeing around the use of the word. So we've called it disc, ultimate disc, flying disc. And it's really funny how little people realize that was actually a deliberate legal step that was taken. Yeah. Yeah. I offer this context because I definitely looked at yesterday's news and I said, oh, someone finally got to Wham-O.
Yeah. Okay.
And it made me curious if anyone had tried previously. But also, I will offer that in the last, because if I recall, that trademark lawsuit that Wham-O won was maybe 2007 or 2008. I don't think Wham-O has initiated a trademark lawsuit since then. I took the approach, and in fairness, I'm not trying to profit off the word Frisbee right now. I've avoided it too. Mm-hmm. That it has largely become a generic term. That the concept and word of Frisbee is so commonplace at this point that Wham-O would have a really hard time winning a lawsuit. Now that said, it certainly behooved AUDL/UFA to talk to Wham-O about it. It would have behooved USAU to talk to Wham-O about it. And for better or worse, whether those conversations did or didn't happen, Wham-O has offered, as I understand it, it's a permission to utilize the trademark, not a transfer of said trademark, unless I've misunderstood.
That's my understanding as well. But yeah, let's dig into it. So
yeah,
AUDL buys the ARIA disc, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they got ARIA. The mold is overseas. Wham-O is owned by a Hong Kong company. They're overseas. They're gonna probably take that mold and make a Wham-O branded. It's going to be, they're just going to slap the Wham-O brand on there, right? So
I don't know. Honestly, that part that has not been clear to me. What product are they using is not quite clear to me.
It's the ARIA disc. It's Zaylen's ARIA disc, the mold.
Right, but I'm just saying, to your point, is it just that they're just adding the name on it, or is there, because Wham-O is a product itself, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's also a product.
Wham-O is not a product. Nope. Wham-O. I mean, look, I'll just show you a couple examples really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of while he's stepping away, Tony, I don't think it was clear from the press released or whatever that could be considered that they were going to be making, that Wham-O was going to be making or using the Aria mold. I don't think that was clear.
It's there. It's just sort of hidden. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's like kind of like the hidden text, but it's pretty clear. It's like, oh, we purchased this disc mold. Oh, now Wham-O is joining the thing. We're going to call the Aria disc next year. It's going to be called a professional Frisbee. It says it all right there. They don't say like we're taking the mold and slapping the Wham-O label on there. They don't say that. So like this is a Wham-O disc from 84 or whatever, right? This is just like the Discrafts. This is a 165,
right?
That we use now. This is a Wham-O. This is a Wham-O disc that they were selling, right? This is just these discs and that other one I showed you. There's about 40 to 50 different types of models that Wham-O put out. I mean, a lot of different models.
So I hear you. I think my point is I believe you can still go to a store today and buy a Wham-O.
Oh, yes.
So that's what I meant, but it's a product.
Okay.
Sorry, just to clarify what I was like, no, I'm pretty sure they could go to a Big Lots and find a Wham-O.
I just wanted to like show a lot of random.
Oh yeah, of course.
I have more.
But no, to your point, it raises a couple questions. It raises questions about visibility and what we call ourselves and how we identify ourselves. It raises a question about what the preferred equipment is going to be in this sport moving forward. And I think there's a larger question to be had there.
Can I ask you about this? The connotation and usage of Frisbee. I mean, part of the reason maybe that we've stayed away from Frisbee is that you think about the beach and the dogs, and it's kind of a goofy name, and it's a toy, and everyone knows what a Frisbee is, but they don't think it has anything to do with sport. But this might change that. What do you think?
Well, I mean, Ultimate is a weird name, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's our branding problem, more so than the word Frisbee. That's my perspective.
You're on the disc 7 side. You're with Keith Rayner, is what you're saying.
Flying disc. Flat ball.
Flat ball. I don't know about that one.
Yeah. But to your point, the usage of the word can be both a powerful tool for brand familiarity, sport familiarity, product familiarity. And yes, there is always been a confusion of the word disc Frisbee. And now there might be less. I do agree that there might be less confusion moving forward. But yeah, I mean, both of the words are funny. Ultimate and Frisbee. They're funny words.
In a sense, do you think this helps Ultimate overall?
I think it remains to be seen. I'm gonna not look into the crystal ball just yet. I see the benefits of it. How that translates to dollars and cents, which in the end for UFA, they're a business. It remains to be seen.
You're a business.
Yeah.
Or you represent a business.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Again, as someone who struggles with just telling people I play Ultimate Frisbee or Ultimate Disc, you already lost me. And so, again,
is this can this sport, can the image of Ultimate, and this is what my documentary is kind of getting into a little bit. Let's look 10 years down the road. Let's say 20 years down the road. Can bringing Frisbee back in, this is why I think it's a strong move by the AUDL. But I want to know how it affects WUL and other places. And I think Tushar is going to read a quote on that in a bit. But the theory to me is that if they can properly bring the word Frisbee back to represent and have the connotation be associated with competitive sport, then all of a sudden now you've got something. Well, it increases the value of the word, increases the value of the brand Wham-O, increases the value of whoever is using it, whether it's the AUDL or it's you or it's me, right? So all of a sudden, you know, telling someone you play ultimate Frisbee doesn't have to be a weird fucking thing anymore. It can actually be like, oh yeah, of course, yeah. Is that?
Yeah.
Do we see that happening in the future?
It's possible, but that said, I've also seen, with the popularity of disc golf, I also think that there has been an ancillary effect for us.
Yeah.
When people are trying to look up disc golf and they find ultimate disc,
Yeah.
by moving to Frisbee, in many ways, maybe we want to be more deliberate about moving us away from the game that looks like golf. But let's be clear. Like I said, this is all still trade-offs. In a sport that is still so very much in its infancy. And so again, Tony, you may end up being right that this is going to be the watershed moment that gets everyone to know the sport. And now, we are, not even on ESPN, but covered on the nightly news and things like that. The Houston Frisbee team won its game today. It could be.
This is what the founders of the sport kind of saw in the 1970s. I mean, they honestly kind of exactly the little like rendition you did there, like on the nightly news, the Houston Frisbee team, like that's kind of what they saw in 75. They're like, oh, this is what's going to happen. It just never happened.
So just, I think we do need to hear a little bit more, and we'd like to hear your reaction to this quote, because there's been a lot of people giving their opinion over the last day. And I'm just going to do a quick screen share here.
Mm-hmm.
So this one was pulled off of Twitter/X. Don't think y'all realize that the only people that can use the word Frisbee legally is the UFA. When you say that we got the name back for our sport, you're just talking about the players/staff in the UFA. The WUL and PUL can't use it. All these women matching athletes cannot claim they are professional ultimate Frisbee players. So while it is cool that they were able to acquire the rights, it essentially pushes women matching players out.
Yeah, I saw that quote. I know Sasha. I'm appreciative of what a huge fan he has been of the female matching divisions. And again, this really goes to me, the crux of the question of what is going to get the name brand. I think, Tony, that's really what you're trying to hit on, is if we are trying to create recognition of this sport, is the word Frisbee the tool? Is that it? And I really am trying to say, I am saying the jury's going to be out on this one. Mm-hmm. That the word itself is the key to its acceptance, to its widespread popularity. Is it ultimately going to be the word? Mm-hmm. I think that the sport has a lot to still reckon with. I think the sport has to reckon with, what does it look like at the elite level? Is it have observers? Does it have, referees? The sport needs to reckon with the fact that it still should be considering NCAA recognition. Mm-hmm. Heck, just even getting into high schools would be great. There's a lot for this sport to still have to do. And I do agree, Tony, I'm not taking away. The word itself is half of the battle, because it's how you classify yourself. But it's access to, and right now we still need to do that.
Just because you brought it up, I'm 1,000% with you. Come on, let's talk about it. Why have we failed in this? Why has the sport? Why are we not in high schools? Why do we not have robust youth growth? Why have we dropped the ball in NCAA? Why is flag football the next girls' high school sport in New Jersey? I mean, what the fuck is going on here? We've been a sport for 55 years. We have a lot to offer. What do you think?
I have so many thoughts on this, and this would take longer than you and I were even planning on chatting. Yeah. But that said, you made the comment where the founders thought we would be here. I agree, but growth doesn't come from just saying I have a cool concept. This is how majority of startups fail. Mm-hmm. I have a cool concept. It's the coolest thing ever, but it's how you market. It's how you grow. It's where you grow. It's how you choose to grow. And Ultimate in so many ways was constrained by its very college elite access point. Mm-hmm. And it never trickled down, and there was an attempt to trickle it down. Yeah. And that attempt really hasn't come into play until the last decade, if not two, that we are finally seeing these disc orgs come into play that are local, that are focusing on growth, that are focusing on youth ultimate. That's where, in so many ways, flag football started as a game of kids. That's where it started, right? The difference for ultimate is it started as a game for adults.
No,
and
not true. Started
well,
for kids.
It did, but the folks who created the version that we know, or the version that we've adapted now 11 times, were adults.
No,
right?
No,
No?
that's
No?
1,000% wrong. They were all teenagers.
No, come on. So remember, there was the group that was designed, and then when we became adults, we kept refining it.
They were all kids. Every tenant that the entire sport we play today, from mixed ultimate to letting anyone who wants to play, to its sort of like catch all, catch can kind of attitude, to its not referees, all of it came from teenagers in high school in Maplewood, New Jersey. All of it.
Right. But let's be clear. When I say kids, we have a very large range of what we mean for kids, right? We don't see a lot of 17 and 18-year-olds playing flag football. We see 5 and 6-year-olds playing flag football. We see 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds playing flag football. So what I'm trying to offer is that the age gap is still important is there, you know, like what is accessible. And that's also been an issue for Frisbee, right? If you're a child, 4 or 5 years old, we haven't, for the most part, adapted. I know a lot of disc orgs are now a version that kids can play with without breaking their nose. The disc itself is designed for more adult hands. And so I mostly was offering is that we see this flag football. You see those little footballs? And the kids go play with the little football.
I have not.
Oh, yeah, the little ones that you can, like the little Nerf balls that you throw around. But I'm just saying,
we have like Discraft makes a soft juniors disc.
Yeah, but those haven't really taken off, right?
Yeah,
like I tried to buy a whole set because they kind of came out, and there was a big burst. I don't know 10 years ago, and then they kind of just dried up. And it's hard to get one now, even like. And I know I've been hunting for it, but it's hard.
Well,
right, and to the point, right? Like Tony, like they wrote a set of rules to start. Kids don't write a set of rules and make an official handbook, right? So this game really feels like it was started off in an organized manner with a set of defined rules. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, because I think you're making a documentary on this.
He has researched this question. And I'm not here to dispute the history of it, Tony. You asked the question of why it hasn't grown. And I'm just saying it kept moving up and it didn't move down.
Okay. This is 100% correct. So those teenage kids wrote the rules, popularized the rules, and then graduated high school, went up to college, did the same thing in college, and
then disseminated to their college friends.
Yeah. And it all went to colleges, and it stayed in colleges and never went back to high school. Absolutely. Yeah. And then they became adults, and
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it's coming back and it's coming to this thing, but yeah, Tushar, your point is apt. Like, why aren't we seeing more discs designed for kids? You know, why aren't we sitting here having more conversations about connecting with Boys and Girls Club? Disc orgs are doing it. Local disc orgs are doing it. We keep talking about the accessibility of sport. It's so cheap. It's just for, cones and a Frisbee. It's so cheap. But yet we need to continue to push and be mindful in both the strategic plan for USAU, which they finally put in as an affirmative step in that direction, which we hadn't seen in the last 2 strategic plans.
Yeah. Slap, you could almost say, I mean, this is really broad terms, but if this sport has led a socialist life where it's like, okay, let's just, do it together and try to make it work, as opposed to a capitalist life. A capitalist life would have said, let's get some money. Let's take the money. Let's reinvest it into youth. Those youth 10, 15 years from now will pay off. Because that's what you do when you're buying a stock. You're buying a stock in a company that's going to pay you in 10 years from now, not tomorrow, right? So you're investing. Our sport is not an investment thinking sport, maybe until now, because obviously you're different, and you
disc orgs are thinking like this, though. That's the thing. To your point, local disc orgs are thinking, whether you want to call it capitalist, what do you want to call it, but that disc orgs have taken that tenet of, if we want to get a return on this investment, it has to go to youth. I can tell you, I was on the board of directors for Barrier Disc for 7 years. I was on the board of directors when we hired Valerio,
Oh,
who
yeah.
was the first full-time hire for Barrier Disc.
I love
We
Valerio.
literally told him, make your own way. Build programming to pay for yourself. And that's what he did. And I got to tell you, we tried unsuccessfully to market this idea that we wanted the adults to help support the kids. And that did not go well.
Why?
There was this larger concept that we really sort of idealized, that this is the circle of life and things like that. But, at the time that I joined BATA, which was 2010, 11, Barrier Disc was really two things. It was rec and it was club. No youth. And so you were trying to add this third cycle, but the realistic thing is not many people go from rec to club. And at the time there was no youth to club. So there was no cycle to create, and it was hard to sell to our adult leagues. Hey, we're going to up your fees $5 because we want to give it back to youth. By and large, I got to tell you, it was not a popular move by us. To get folks to be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I see the value in what you were doing, which is why we had to literally go, Valeria, pay your own way, because we can't fund you. Otherwise, we were getting so much flack for trying to increase fees.
And that's something our sport has been struggling with for a long time. I mean, we've been extraordinarily thrifty, and we paid the price.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the volunteerism as the model of this sport is not sustainable either. I fully agree with you.
It's been noble in sort of its own way, because it's sort of a tribal nobility in a way. Like we're you just kind of do it for your people and your group and yourself, but it's not very sustainable, and it doesn't really help to grow the sport.
You've been involved in Ultimate for a long time, and if you could tell us how long. And you said volunteerism is not does not sustain this. Yet it still seems like all of us are still volunteering. And why are you still passionate about this sport?
Yeah, I started in 2002 in college as a sophomore in college. So we are now 22 years of my involvement in this sport. To your point, my volunteerism began very early in this sport, but for better or worse, as a career, I've chosen a field that really relies on this notion of volunteerism. I'm a criminal defense attorney by trade, and there's an innate sense for me of giving back. I'm a big believer of the quote, "Much is expected to whom much is given, for the responsibility is greater." I know it's a biblical quote, but I've loved that quote. And I was very fortunate. You talked about my career a little bit, to have a wild career in this sport. And it felt in many ways only appropriate to have to give back. And in so many ways, the reason I think I'm still here is the projects I get to take on now are so cool, so forward thinking, that I really want to help think about and bring about what this next iteration of our sport looks like. It's changing and it's evolving, because people decide to make it so. And I want to make it so. And so that's why I'm still here.
Damn. Love it. Well, it's a pretty good way to go out.
Thanks again for your time on this. You're our first guest on it, and we'll see.
We're going to clearly have to edit some of this. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if we will. I think
bonus episodes. Actually, we can say this. Opening weekend, I believe, is Bay Area, Utah. Are you still coaching the Bay Area team? Is this correct?
Yep.
All right. So who's going to win that game, and what are you telling your team right now?
It'll be the Falcons, and I'm telling them because we're putting in the work. We're building chemistry amongst a lot of programs, and more importantly, I have very cool to see this year such vested players who are seeing the value of what we are building, who understand the significance of it, and they're carrying that weight now.
Okay.
So.
Love it.
Yeah.
Psyched. Great. All right.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great game.
We're going to tune in.
Yeah, it'll be free.
And all right. Thanks for joining us for this, our first episode. I have no clue where we're going with this other than we're just going to enjoy ourselves and hope we produce something interesting for you. Feel free to connect with us at theoutsiders@iamultimate.com. Over to you, Tony.
Listen, you can watch a sneak preview of my documentary film, The Lot, this Tuesday, actually, January 23rd, 7 p.m. at nutsy.net. It's a course called Telling Ultimate Stories Through Film. I'll be joined by the torched documentary filmmaker Hoag Kempner. That, Tushar, is an amazing film. I highly encourage you to watch it. It's about the Austin Torch PUL team, but it's really about the players that make that team. Fantastic. Lexi Marsh, Draper White are making a film as well, and it's run by Tina Booth, the great and famous and infamous Tina Booth, who is awesome. So thanks for listening. Tell all your friends the Outsiders podcast is a thing, apparently. Next up is going to be Irv Kalb. He is one of the founders, creators of the rules of Ultimate Frisbee. He is a pioneer. He is someone who really, we wouldn't be playing the game we are playing today without Irv Kalb, and we have him on our next podcast, so make sure to check that out.